Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth?
The prophecy of the destruction of Tyre. Now the city of Tyre was the beautiful capital of Phoenicia, just north of Israel. Part of the city was on the mainland and part on a beautiful offshore island. Now in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 26, the prophet Ezekiel delivers this message from God to Tyre in 586 BC. I am against you, O Tyre, and I will destroy you. And if the prophecy ended there, it would have been significant enough, because this city was well protected. It was virtually indestructible in many ways. But the prophecy did not end there. God, through the prophet Ezekiel, made 7 very specific, virtually untemperable predictions about exactly how Tyre would be destroyed.
Prediction number 1. Tyre would be defeated by a group of allied nations, led by the huge army of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, coming from the north. Prediction number 2. God would use this huge army to so destroy Tyre's walls and pull down her towers that Scripture actually records God as stating through the prophet Ezekiel that he will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock. Prediction number 3 gives this bizarre yet eerily accurate detail. She will become a place to spread fish nets. Prediction number 4. Her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. That will be the specific method of destruction, not any of the other favorite methods of King Nebuchadnezzar's armies. Prediction number 5. The armies, according to this precise prediction, would plunder Tyre's wealth and loot her merchandise. They will break down her walls and demolish fine houses and throw her stones, timber, and rubble into the sea. Next comes this stunning prediction, which holds an unanswerable challenge out to all skeptics of Bible prophecy. Prediction number 6. God said this to Tyre: you will never be rebuilt, for I, the Lord, have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. And finally, prediction number 7. You will be sought, but you will never again be found, declares the sovereign Lord. Despite the certainty of the existence of the city of Tyre, no matter what efforts will be made by the world's greatest archaeologists, no trace of the ruins of Tyre will ever be found. Only proof that she did in fact exist. That is an irrefutable prediction that certainly puts the credibility of the Bible on the line. For if the ruins of Tyre ever could be found, it would undermine the very authenticity of its claim to be written by God.
Those are the predictions. Very specific, very tamper-proof. And here's what went down. And if you're a skeptic, I challenge you to check it out for yourself. Check out the times, the dates, the places for yourself. Check as often as you like. Check any and all reliable sources that you want. Encyclopedias, history books, archaeological records, you name it. Check them all. But here's what you'll find.
History records that a king named Nebuchadnezzar attacked the city of Tyre with his huge and mighty army. He did so because they arrogantly refused to surrender. Most other nations quickly and voluntarily surrendered when they saw the strength of Nebuchadnezzar's forces, but not Tyre, because they themselves had a powerful navy, with a military fleet of ships that few could compete with. And so when Nebuchadnezzar came after them, despite the prophecy of Isaiah that they would be destroyed, they mocked him and relied on their own strength. But God, regardless of what Tyre said, I am against you, O Tyre, and I will destroy you. and make you bare as a rock, and your people will all be killed by the sword. So Nebuchadnezzar came against Tyre and destroyed the city early in the 6th century BC. But some of the people managed to escape by using their navy ships to escape to the islands of Tyre, just off the coast of mainland Tyre. And most of the biblical prophecies were unfulfilled.
And if the critics that exist today were present then, and surely there were critics against God's word then as well as today, they must have scoffed and pointed to the inaccuracy of the fulfillment. But verse 3 says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, O Tyre, and I will destroy you, and I will tell you exactly how I'm going to do it," with 7 very specific, very detailed prophecies. And it will happen. And indeed happen it did, a couple of hundred years later. Just listen to a quote from not some Bible commentary, but the secular historical Encyclopedia Britannica.
Alexander III, in his wars on the Persians after defeating Darius III at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, marched southwest towards Egypt, calling up the Phoenician cities to open their gates. The citizens of Tyre refused to do so, and Alexander laid siege to the city. Possessing no fleet, he demolished old Tyre, the mainland, and with the debris built a moat 200 feet wide across the straits, separating the old and new towns, erecting towers and war engines at the far end.
Now at the port, Tyre's navy was giving a good fight and preventing Alexander the Great from finishing them off. So what did he do? Exactly what God said he would do in the first prophecy in verse 3. He allies with many other nations who have navies and comes against Tyre. Now listen to what secular historian Philip Myers has to say about what happens next. And keep in mind, if you would, that this man is not a biblical commentator, not a theologian, just a historian recording the facts in a historical textbook.
Alexander the Great reduced Tyre to ruins in 332 BC. She recovered a measure from this blow, but never regained her place she had previously held in the world. The large part of the site of the once great city is now as bare as the top of a rock, a place where the fishermen still spread their nets to dry, which were the precise words used by God in the book of Isaiah to describe the events in the first place.
And to top it all off, remember, prophecy number 7, God said, "I will bring you to a horrible end, and you will be no more. You will be sought, but you will never again be found." Do you want to disprove the authenticity of the Bible? Find the remains of Tyre. Good luck. They don't exist. Archaeologists have searched for years and found nothing. And the Bible frequently makes that same kind of challenge to any skeptic. City after city that's been destroyed in the Bible, and God consistently makes the same remarkable claim that they will never, never be rebuilt, ever. And every time that kind of statement is made about each city, from that point forward in history up to and including today, those areas lie barren. Each one stands as an unarguable testimony against the skeptics. No one has ever rebuilt those cities because God said no one ever will rebuild them.
The fall of Tyre. In the year 597 BC, the prophet Ezekiel made a bold proclamation against the city of Tyre. At the time, the city was one of the wealthiest and most secure cities in the entire world. It had massive walls. It also had an island city that the inhabitants, if they were attacked, could go out to that island city. Yet for all that, Ezekiel predicted several things that would happen to Tyre. He said that the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar would come up against the city, that he would build siege mounds against the wall, and the city's walls would be broken down. He predicted that many nations would come up against the city, and the city would be scraped clean like a rock. He predicted that its stones and its timber and its soil would be thrown into the sea. How are you going to get the stones and timber and soil of a huge city like Tyre thrown into the sea? As we look at history, secular history provides the answer for that. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, did come up against the city of Tyre. He did exactly what Ezekiel predicted, but it didn't stop there. Because after he built a siege mound against Tyre, the inhabitants moved out to the island city and he couldn't attack it. And yet, in about 330 BC, a man by the name of Alexander the Great attacked Tyre. And the inhabitants did the same. They went out to that island city, but Alexander the Great wasn't happy with a simple victory over the mainland city. He took the rocks and the timbers and the soil and scraped them clean, dumped them into the sea, and made a causeway out to the island city. How could Ezekiel have looked into the future more than 250 years and predicted what would have happened? Divine assistance.
Let me give you, I think, just maybe a couple more here. The book of Ezekiel, the book of Amos, the two prophets there talk about the city of Tyre. Okay? Don't go there because you always fall asleep. No, wrong kind of Tyre. Okay? That's right. Now you're waking up. Okay? The city of Tyre, Tyre. Okay? Would listen to these specifics. Would specifically be attacked by many nations, right? Not just one, but many. Its fortresses would fail. Okay? Listen to this. Their stones, timber, and soil would be thrown into the sea. That's kind of weird. And the remains of the city, all that would be left is now it's a place to spread fishing nets. That's what God said, right? So again, one more time, the question is, did God get it right? Yes, he did. You talk about specifics, this is cool. Babylon was the first to overthrow the city of Tyre, okay? But if you understand what was going on with Tyre, okay, they had two fortresses. You had the mainland area there, okay, but then they had this little island fortress out in the bay. Okay, is what they would do. And so when Babylon came and to overthrow it, they did. They got the mainland fortress, but the people retreated out to their little island fortress and they escaped total destruction. Well, wait a second. Does that mean God got it wrong? No, pay attention. He wasn't done yet. Almost 250 years later, remember it was going to be attacked by many nations. Alexander the Great comes along. He attacks the city of Tyre. And when he did, the people did the same thing. We're going out to your little fortress thing. And they probably danced just like that, JR. What do you think? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, anyway, so they go back out to the island fortress. But unlike Nebuchadnezzar, unlike the Babylons, when Alexander attacked them, he didn't stop. Okay, listen to what he did. History records for us that Alexander the Great, guess what he did? He took the rubble from Tyre's mainland ruins that he destroyed, okay? He took the stones, timber, and soil, and he cast them out into the sea repeatedly, making a land bridge all the way out to their island fortress. I was looking at it last night. You could still see the bridge that he made from the ruins of the city. How many guys would say that, unlike that dancing thing, JR, that when he was probably about halfway to there, they were stopping, going like this. They were starting to freak out a little. You know, he's getting closer. Right? And that's exactly what happened. But again, as history records, the city of Tyre was repeatedly destroyed, not only by Babylon and by Alexander the Great, but by the Phoenicians, by the Romans, the Crusaders, even the Muslims. And today, Tyre is nothing. I was looking at a picture again last night. It was now just the remains of the city is a flat, barren rock. And guess what the people there right now today do there? It's a little tiny fishing village there, and they spread out their nets, and even today, that's all that's left. God accurately prophesies, tells us in advance, before long ever happened, proving this book came from him. How could the whole world get so absolutely violent in such a short amount of time?
The world is up in arms, all the pieces falling apart. Gotta get out while you can. Gotta get out while you can. The drums inside my chest just can't seem to catch a breath. Gotta get out while you can.
What are you doing, huh? You got a gun now, you're killing people. Oh my God. Oh my God, stop it. I'm not taking that. No. Stop it.
Am I gonna swim? Am I gonna sink? Am I gonna bend? Am I gonna break? Or will I make it out alive? Make it out alive. Am I gonna fly? Am I gonna fall? Am I gonna live? Gonna lose it all? Or will I make it out alive? Make it out alive.
neighborhood, they start young, man. And it's like when you read the news headlines, that's the age frame they all dying in from gun violence. So we got to teach the kids how to defend themselves. It's senseless violence at the end of the day, but it's like, what do you do when you caught in that moment? You know, you rather be caught with protection than without protection.
What the hell is going on in Chicago? What the hell is happening there? Chicago is out of control.
Chicago faces an epidemic of gun violence. This year alone, more than 2,100 people have been shot, more than 400 killed. The 4th of July weekend was especially violent. Around 100 people were shot in just over 4 days. Adriana Diaz gained unique access in some of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods that weekend for CBSN On Assignment. Adriana, good morning.
Good morning. Chicago police have already seized more than 5,000 guns from the streets of Chicago this year. Young men that we met on the south and west sides told us how easy it is to get illegal guns and why many never leave their homes without one.
What the hell is going on in Chicago? More than 3,000 people have been shot in Chicago since January 1st.
That's like worse than the war-torn nations that you're looking at. That's worse than Afghanistan.
Like, how many people died in Chicago last week? Some insane number. They're reporting on the lack of attention that the murders in Chicago are getting in like the national news and how crazy it is.
Crazy. We're going to take you now to Chicago, where this past weekend at least 52 people were shot, 8 of them killed, in a wave of violence across the city. What is going on there? Here's Chris Bury.
The mayhem at this housing project made no more sense than any of the other shootings. A Father's Day party boiled over. 5 shot, including a 1-year-old girl. Gunned down in a weekend of violence so typical it didn't even make the front pages.
They're waging war in the streets of Chicago, and we're losing children every single day.
Most of the shootings took place in poor neighborhoods, far from downtown and tourist attractions. One reason much of the city seems to be shrugging its shoulders.
I think people just say, oh, it's a bunch of gangbangers shooting at each other. Unfortunately, though, often a lot of innocent people get caught in the crossfire.
The losses are staggering. Today, this family learned that their 17-year-old was found shot to death just this morning.
I mean, this is crazy. I mean, they didn't have to kill my son.
A dozen gunshot victims came here to Stroger Hospital. One died, others are hanging on.
We had a young girl come in that was shot in the back and will probably be paralyzed.
For the rest of her life.
For the rest of her life.
The shootings now commonplace in a city where gangs are powerful, guns plentiful. Beyond the guns and the gangs, the city is coping with a street culture in which all too often the silliest squabbles lead to deadly force.
I think people have just grown up thinking that, you know, if I'm mad at you, I'm going to grab my gun and shoot you.
So 52 shot in only 3 days, and a city seems all but numb to an epidemic of violence. Chris Bury, ABC News, Chicago.
Fuck.
Standing on the sidewalk,
Jesus
someone
Christ.
opened fire.
Jesus Christ. Like there is a war going on in Chicago that's way more deadly than most of the wars we're engaging in overseas. You don't hear about that many soldiers dying every day.
Now that's another scenario. How we said, like, that's real.
Yeah, that's real. Right.
The
But
fear's real.
unless you're there.
You walk outside in Chicago, that is a real fear that you should have.
And this is what's crazy. The number of people in Chicago this year passes 1,400. 1,400 people shot.
Crazy.
That's a weird statistic. It's a terrible situation, like culturally.
This is since January.
Well, it seems weird saying only.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
I know what you're saying. You're saying in comparison to the other number since January. Yeah, that's insane.
It's crazy.
That is insane. And that's happening right here in the good old US of A in one of the biggest cities in the world. Chicago's giant, awesome city.
And it's happening in other cities also that people don't know about.
But Chicago's the most glaring.
Yeah.
Scooby fucking soldiers, man.
Real rap, man. Real rap, man. Real rap, man. I'm like, fuck everybody. Fuck everybody. I'm supposed to. They ain't did shit for us anyway.
too. You in the building, you gon' see me coming through the roof. It's been a struggle, but real niggas seem to make it through. And if I catch you back on Essex, you gon' make the news. Then rap catch up in college, kid gon' have you on the tube. So tell the Rocco me and Fazo, you gon' see him soon. You niggas fooled out to the root, you pussy niggas fool. Come out the blue pole in your face like it was peekaboo. Like Pikachu, I come to strike, I see a nigga snooze. They say I move like a ninja, they see me coming through.
Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth?